welcome again, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. So, as I mentioned, this is a fireside chat. We'd be discussing hyper casual, everything hyper casual. What was the hyper casual? Where is it going? So on and so forth. And we have representatives. The heads, big heads from publishing giants. We have Ayush Poddar from Supersonic, and we have Chansun from Line Studios. And I'll be the moderator for this session. I'm Devi. You might be seeing me from this morning. I'm the co-founder of Devi Studio. So let's get started with a little bit of an introduction. I should.
Sure. So if you want to start, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah. Hi guys. Chansun here, coming from Lion Studios. I used to work for Google Play, so I was reviewing a bunch of games and apps before joining Lion Studios. I don't want to say bad thing about Google, but I don't know. It's a private company, always looking for profit. So they were focusing on a lot of big giant, gaming companies and studios. And I wanted to work more closely with indie studios. So that's why I joined Lion Studios about 3 years ago, and no regrets so far. So I've been enjoying my work. I have worked with, or I'm currently working with a few Indian studios, and this is my first time after COVID. I've been here a few times before, but it's really nice to put a face to a name. It's really nice seeing you guys, and grab me anytime if you guys have questions, if you see me anywhere walking around.
All right. So basically, I'll just introduce myself with my name. My name is Ayush Poddar, and I work with Supersonic, which is basically part of Iron Source. And you might not know Iron Source in its essence. Basically, we are a app economy-based business, wherein we help businesses to grow their apps on various platforms. And Supersonic is one of their publishing solution for hyper-casual games. I work there as a publishing manager, and mostly work with Indian studios and studios around India, basically, mostly from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and around those regions. I joined Supersonic, it's been like, I think, 11 months now. And before that, I used to work another publisher. And before that, I used to work as a game designer myself. I used to create hyper-casual games. I used to approach all the publishers. I wanted to know what works in the industry, like how is it done. And now I know the behind the scenes of it, and it's really exciting to come to this end of the chair. And yeah, excited to meet all of you, and just have a conversation about what happens this side, and because I already know that side of the chair. So yeah.
Awesome. So if we are talking hyper casual, we'll definitely have to start with addressing the elephant in the room, right? We've been seeing lesser number of hyper casual games getting published over the last few months, and that is a fact. And the market has considerably changed. So how do you summarize as to what's happening in the market right now?
Yeah, definitely true. We are seeing less number of hyper-casual games in general, like new games. But of course, we are seeing like older hits getting into top charts, staying in the top charts for longer, and producing a lot of money for everyone. So basically, what's happening is that for some of the publishers, it's always about chasing for a new hit. For some of the publishers, it's mostly about investing into their old hits, investing into their current hits, and making it a super profitable game. Not just a game, basically an app which everyone can use. And that's where we are seeing less number of hyper-casual games into the top charts. And also, in terms of the higher LTV games that we are already talking about, in terms of hybrid casual games, of course, there's a trend of going hybrid casual and investing a lot more into your prototypes. And it's basically true, we have seen from 2016, 2017, we started with Flappy Bird. We gone through the runner zone. We gone through the puzzle zone. We gone through all of the simulation games. And of course, like the trends change. And this is how you need to understand that you have to invest a lot more into any specific game, not just hyper casual, because again, like the market itself evolves a lot, and it's just not for the games, it's for everything. And that is how, games is also evolving into something which anyone can, enjoy a lot more than before they used to do. So yeah.
Um, what I think is, so 2018 was when hyper casual really started booming, right? A lot of people saw this really easy to play games like all over the world, and they were just hooked by all these hyper casual games. And it's been what is it? 19, 20, 21, 22. Okay, 4 years. It's been 4 years. And a lot of themes have been already tried out. Like all the mechanics that you can think of have already tried out, right? There's nothing new in hyper casual, I feel. If you can find the next new thing, I think it's gonna be a hit game. And I think users are also used to seeing a lot of similar trends, similar art, similar theme games. They're not interested in playing another game of the previous game that they played before, right? So I think it's just like so natural that hyper casual is now a little bit, like not as interesting as casual games. Another thing I think is it's just my speculation, my guesstimate. I think during COVID, so the thing about hyper casual was you can play it anywhere, like waiting for your bus, waiting for your cab, just for 5 minutes, and then you don't really care if you stop at level 12, level 20. I think after COVID hit, a lot of us have more time playing actual games. That's when we start caring more about, I actually want to reach the high score that I made last week, or I want to make it to level 100 because now I have all the time, I've got nothing else to do, right? So I definitely saw this kind of trend where users started to play like actual games. I'm not saying that hyper casual games are not actual games, but I'm saying that the games that are monetized better through IAPs rather than advertisement. So I think this is like the natural phenomena that we're seeing. But now that the COVID is kind of over, I mean, none of us are I'm not wearing a mask. So maybe after a year or two, or not even a year or two, 6 months to 8 months, like from now on, we'll see this hyper casual trends like making a comeback. So that's also very possible. So that's what I think is happening this year.
Cool. Chansun, you nicely summed it up. I mean, 2019 or 2018, we had very abstract games. We had games like Helix Jumps that hit the top charts, just stayed and it just squatted on the charts, right, for so long. And now, if you are to build a similar game, it's probably not going to work. Players are starting to want more and more from their games. They are wanting more and more depth. So, is this where you guys see the market going? Are we moving towards a much more gamified version of a game where LTV is something that has to be thought of right from the ideation phase? And if yes, what is the product strategy that you have in mind for your personal companies?
Yes. So I don't know how many of you guys actually know about this, but Lion Studios actually stopped pursuing any hyper-casual arcade or simulation games. If you were in my previous session, I talked about how little money those games made for us and for our developers. And just thinking about how much resource that we put in and our developers put in to make one game getting published, any like revenue generated less than, I don't know, 50K a month for our developer, we just thought it's not worth it. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money, but just our side of perspective, we're putting my resource, our publishing manager's resource, our team, monetization team, growth team, everyone's involved. That's already 6, 7 people from our side. On top of that, we're working with studios like you guys, from 2 to, I don't know, 20 people just working on one game for 3 to 4 months. I think any games like that should make more than what they were making before. So that's one of the reasons that we're moving away from hyper-casual, short-lived games. So what Devi was saying about like more like gamified games. So now we're at the stage where we are thinking more about the actual game design, the progression. Like, what's the level 50 look like? Like, what's the level 100 look like? And why would users want to play up to level 100? Like, what's the hook in my game? So that's what we're looking for next. And we're also moving towards to more IAP heavy games. I'm not saying that we're doing just casual or mid-core where 80% of our revenue come from IAP. But let's say traditional hyper casual games, maybe we've seen 10% revenue from IAP. Now we're looking at 40% revenue coming out of IAP. So that's our target users, and that's where we want to make money. So instead of just pouncing users with a lot of different interstitials every 30, 45 seconds, we just want to make a game that people can actually enjoy like longer term. So hyper casual games, if you can break even by day 7, that's great. But now we're looking at we can lose money up to day 14, day 21, day 30. A lot of our match 3 merge games, they start making money after month 3, but that's a lot of money because they have a longer LTV. So that's where we're thinking next. We might be wrong and we might change our strategy again after 8 months when we see like a comeback, but for now, that's where we're heading.
Great, very well summed up in terms of higher LTV games. But also, I feel like, let's say, once we look at higher LTV games, I think any game can be converted into a higher LTV game, and that should be, I think, the ideation process itself. Once you come up with a concept, once you, let's say, you saw a video, you want to create a game based out of it. I think it's definitely something that people are looking forward these days. Like studios are looking forward these days, is to add a layer of monetization. How would the game look like in terms of level design, in terms of progression? Let's say, as it was mentioned that let's say after 50 levels, how would the game progress? How would the player play the exact same game but with a different difficulty curve? And then you add the level in your head. It's just in your head that how would I integrate the monetization system with this new let's say sub loop that I'm adding to the core loop. So higher LTV doesn't necessarily mean, investing a lot of resources, coming up with, I don't know, idle arcades only or something like that. It generally is where market is going, definitely. But also it starts with your concept itself, that you have to think of a game into higher LTV terms, wherein you can add a lot more into progression, you can add a lot more into variation, and the game is going to be successful in terms of LTV. So yeah, as Chansun said, I don't have much to add to it, but yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Awesome. I think that's completely 2 different strategies that we spoke about. So, Ayush, according to you, it's by LTV games, we don't have to necessarily go hybrid or go IAP, but we just need to have that strong retentive core loop that will naturally give a good retention in the first build.
Definitely. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you look at any concept that you are going to test or that you are going to create itself, I would say think of it in long terms, and that is long term, LTV. Think of any concept into what if the game would survive, let's say day 7, even if you have like hundreds of levels put into it, is there variation to it? If the monetization will be successful after 50 levels, if yes, then yeah, it's a higher LTV game. That's it.
Absolutely. And given that we are talking about 2 different approaches towards that end goal, which is a good high LTV game that can sustain in the long term, what is your take on monetization? I mean, how would it differ for the both approaches? Is it the same as before, where we pump interstitials, or should we also have to think about RVs right from the start during the ideation phase? How does it?
Definitely. I'd agree upon the second point, that we have to think about the monetization of any game that we are going to create, not just hyper casual, any game. Let's look at it in a perspective of casual games. They have to be really sophisticated with the monetization straight from the beginning, and that's what, like, moving from hyper casual to hybrid casual. Let's say in general higher LTV games, you have to think about the monetization as well in the first process, and you don't have to build upon the monetization. You have to build a game and then you have to build the monetization around it. So have to think the concept that would be successful with the monetization that you are thinking, right? Again, it's always about the higher LTV that we are talking a lot more these days, and yeah, like in general, runners are also a higher LTV game these days because we are seeing a much more sophisticated level of monetization into runners in generic runners, I'm saying, and like previously we used to have just one currency into hyper casual runners. Now we can see like 3-4 currencies and then merge into a one big currency. Then you can expand it as a game economy in hyper casual. There was no game economy as per hyper casual, let's say a couple of years back. But yeah, monetization is a lot more sophisticated, and definitely you have to think about it straight from the beginning, and that's how you will eventually succeed with higher LTV.
Yeah, I kind of agree and kind of disagree. It's something that I always go back and forth about as well. Because first, if my developer comes to me with his prototype and then start talking about monetization, I'm like, what are you talking about? Let's build a product first, right? So we want to absolutely make sure that your prototype looks good first. Until then, I mean, don't even consider, interstitials, RVs. I mean, not even IAP. That's so far. But obviously, after we first test your game, any prototype doesn't have to have, like 100 levels or anything. But if it has like a really good level progression, 90% of users complete up to level 30, that means it's an indicator of having a good longer term retention. Then we really want to think about what kind of RV can we put, or what kind of IAP contents that can we put along with building the product. So I would say first, I mean, just because publishers are now focusing more on the monetization part of the game, that doesn't mean that you should also prioritize it. Because I think at the end of the day, it's our job. I mean, our job is to market your games, get you the money that you guys deserve, right? Everything else, like development side, like doing the art, high quality execution, that's on you. So you don't have to overthink it, but just keep in mind that there's always a possibility of your product going to the next level. And then just kind of have like a rough idea of how you want to make money out of your game. Not necessarily about interstitial, because interstitial is getting harder and harder, right? Google just put some regulations around don't put any interstitial in the first 3 levels or something. So now you really want to think about how to monetize it through RV, through IAPs, but first have your product ready, right? If your CPI is $5, guys, come on, like no one's gonna take you seriously. So let's just build a product very well, and then we can talk about monetization, would be my answer.
Great. So I have to ask this question. I think we touched upon this in the previous talk as well. What are your thoughts on going on trend and off trend? Say TikTok trend, you see a TikTok video, it has a chance of lower CPI than going with probably an idle arcade shooter, which can bum you out in terms of CPI, right? So because we are talking about long-term games as well, in terms of ideation, what would you suggest to your developer community in terms of the ideation process? Would you say go CPI first? I'm okay with you bringing TikTok trends as gameplays, or would you say let's think about LTV and then wrap a good CPI around it? Like how is that approach? What would you suggest?
So for us, because we're moving away from hyper casual, we don't really follow TikTok or Facebook trends as, I don't know, intensely as some other publishers might do. We used to do that. We used to have this entire like analytics team analyzing the TikTok trends, sharing the trends. But at the end of the day, it's just a trend that dies away, that goes away. Sometimes they will make a comeback. So that's why we kind of stopped caring about the CPI, because we have confidence that we can lower the CPI as a publisher. But I don't have a confidence that whether I can make your game's retention better just by giving you some advice. So that's where we come in, right? We give you advice and recommendations about how to market your games better, how to monetize it better. But at the end of the day, I think the product itself has to have like good engagement, like good feel, like people want to play your game. So sorry, I just got sidetracked a little, but so yeah, we really don't look at TikTok. I mean, Lion doesn't really do much about the social trends, but what we do is we actually follow very, very closely um, on the top chart, also subgenre top chart. So we're looking at, because we're focusing on puzzle and casual games nowadays, we look at the subgenres of all casual games and puzzle, whether it's sorting puzzle, drawing puzzle, arcade puzzle, any sort of puzzle. And we look at all the games that's making like a comeback in the last 3 months, 2 months, why it's making a comeback, why are users like playing this game again. So we're more like analytical about older games that's been retaining very well or making a comeback that has pretty steady, not only downloads, but also revenue. We're looking at their creatives. So we actually have a lot of case studies going on for other publishers' game that's making a comeback rather than any new trends or new games that's out in the market. So that's what we've been doing these days at Lion.
I definitely agree upon TikTok trends dying in a few days, but also I would like to mention that one of our biggest games, color matches from a TikTok trend, and that's how we. That's what I was trying to say when I talked about implementing, thinking about monetization from the first, higher LTV in terms of game design itself, uh, because color match was such a simple concept, not even a concept, just a video from TikTok. uh, just matching colors or making a new color. What do you think about level 50, let's say? So that's how the studio worked around it. They thought about it very, very deeply on how to implement and extend the basically the life of the game uh, up to level 100, let's say. And that's how the trend survived through so many months, and is still one of the biggest hits out there. And yeah, definitely, in terms of ideation, trends are never irrelevant. It's always relevant to look at the trends, because that's how we get new trends into hyper casual. And we have seen this with a lot of publishers. Let's say even with one Voodoo publisher, stack based runner, it came into trend from a viral video, and it actually became a viral trend into hyper casual market. So of course, like a trend creates a trend, and that's how the whole hyper casual works in itself. And trends are very much relevant, but we also should definitely keep in mind the basics of hyper casual, which is mass marketable games. If you find a video which is very niche, very satisfying, but very niche, it's in trend definitely, but for a niche audience, I don't think that would survive in that case. That wouldn't be able to survive longevity in the market. And yeah, of course, like as I said, trends are relevant for sure.
Awesome. So trends, if I understood this right, so trends are relevant in terms of mechanics, in terms of new genres that are coming up, not so much on the theme.
Yeah, of course. So basically, what I'm trying to say is any video that is trending is not a trend. Of course, there's a video which is highly popular into, let's say, US market, and you want to create a game out of it. As I said earlier, you have to think about it in terms of the LTV, which is, let's say, level 30. If the game is still, if the concept is still making sense at level 30 and it's not looking repetitive, then the trend is making sense to create a hyper casual game based on it. That's it.
Understood. So just segueing on to something that we just discussed. So I remember Chansun mentioning that at Lion, you don't look or think about CPI a lot in the first iteration. So I'm just wondering how relevant or irrelevant the CPI is during the ideation phase.
Of course, I'm not gonna lie, it's very relevant. I'm not gonna move on with like $3 CPI games, guys. But what I'm saying is, I know how some other publishers. I don't know. You tell me, Ayush. What's your KPI to pass like the first stage of testing in terms of CPI? I mean, you guys must have some benchmark.
It's always the generic benchmark for every publisher. Like for in hyper casual terms, it's always have been 30 cents on both the platforms, 30 to 35 cents on
Still
both the
these
platforms.
days, 30
Yeah,
cents.
definitely.
Interesting. So,
Again, this is just for the hyper casual.
yes,
If you go
yes,
around
of
the
course.
sub-genres, it's really very different nowadays.
Do you have a different benchmark for, let's say, idle arcade, incremental arcade?
Not really a benchmark, but of course, if you look at the metrics, that's what like we have been looking towards a lot these days. That if the game has better retention, of course, idle arcades have generally a better retention, which in term lead to a better RV placement, in term lead to a more FSF rate and whatnot. So basically, you can earn more money with higher CPI. It makes sense to push the game into next stage. But of course, like the scaling is also low for these kind of games that we have seen. Like once you scale the game, the CPI relatively goes a little bit higher, and that's when it stopped making sense. So you have to be very particular which game you are moving forward, and it's definitely not based upon a certain CPI benchmark that okay, this game has reached this one, so we should push it. Rather take a holistic approach, and that's how everyone is working these days. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, we used to have 25-cent CPI, KPI for Android, I think 30-cent CPI for iOS for hyper casuals. But now that we're not doing arcade or simulation game, but focusing on puzzle, we have a general KPI of 70 cents. So that's our benchmark. If you have D1 30% minimum and 70-cent CPI of puzzle game, then we're good to move on to the next stage. Basically, building more levels and then take it for monetization test. Whether putting interstitials first, RV first, you can discuss with your PM. So that's our general benchmark. But put it this way, like Ayush said, I mean, you guys saw a couple of examples of bad videos that I showed you guys earlier if you guys were here. Some of them were $1.50, some of them like $1.80, but we still go for an iteration because we sometimes think maybe there's potential, right? Because of retention. If the play time is over 20 minutes, 25 minutes, I mean, forget about the retention, then that means, okay, like this game is interesting enough for users to play 25 minutes. But CPI is like $2, then we're just gonna give it another try, see if we can lower the CPI. If we can lower the CPI down to $1, that's half a cut, right? We'll keep working on it. But after a couple iteration, if the CPI still stays around $1.50, $1.60, then no. Because we know that over time, as we test more and more iteration, monetization test, scale test, CPI will inevitably increase. And this is something that we cannot, we don't want to cover, right? If it starts from $1.50, $1.70. So in that sense, we're not super picky about, oh, like, can you lower it down to like 50 cents from 60 cents? But we're looking at more of a big picture, like we don't want to test $2 game, but we can maybe work on something around $1. So in that sense, we're focusing more on the engagement part of the data rather than CPI. But of course, CPI is still important and it's still the KPI that we'll be looking at.
Right, makes sense. Now I'd like to ask, since again, right from the start, we understood that you, both of you, have very different approaches in terms of your product strategies. So, say a developer wants to work with Supersonic or with Line, what would be like your expectations in terms of their product cycle? Like, what is that ideal developer-publisher relationship that you would look for?
I'm gonna let Ayush go first. So whatever he doesn't have, I'm gonna talk about it. Go for it.
So in terms of like you asked for criteria, and there's no such criteria to be a developer or a studio in hyper casual world. That I would say, if you have a concept, if you have thought about it, and you are able to create it, definitely just go for it and just test it out with Supersonic if you want, test it out with Lion, test it out with anybody you want to, and see your potential. If you are enjoying the process, definitely build a studio around it, try to create more concepts. And of course, like today, like talking about today's market, it's relatively a little, like everyone is talking about it, it's relatively a little more tougher than before, because you need much more quality over art, you need much more quality over the overall gameplay experience. But of course, like there's no such criteria to become a developer or to test game with any publisher. You just have to push. You just have to need a Play Store account. That's it.
I'll just reframe my question again. So what I meant was we were talking about upskill and rekill in the dev talk. So what I actually wanted to ask was, what are your expectations in terms of the developer production cycle, and how they should grow with the market, and how you can help them in the process as a publisher?
Of course, of course. So, like we, as Supersonic, we try to help. Definitely, everyone tries to help, but we also like try to brag about it. Basically, we try to help each and every studio in a very holistic way. Not just not just a particular metric, not just a particular number that we try to push into their throat. It's specifically about growing towards, how do we call it, a trend-related hyper-casual market, growing them towards that, and also while developing them for the future trends as well, in terms of providing them with market analysis, like the current market trends, and also we have developed a new algorithm wherein we generally test the games on Facebook and TikTok. That's what I assume everyone is doing nowadays. But once we see some results over there, we test it for IPM, and also our motion team tries to create videos of their games to lower down the CPI. And we have an algorithm in place that derives a certain marketability score, which is 1 from 5, which is very new. This is into testing. We are trying to bring it out to as many developers as possible on our platform. And this is a short explanation to your marketability score. I mean, your marketability of the concept, and that gives you the power to analyze and evaluate basically whether your concept is good or not. And then again, you can have a discussion with any of your PMs, whoever is managing you, where you are lacking. And then again, this is all related to the holistic development of the developer itself. And that's how we try to basically grow together into a profitable hit one day, most likely.
I actually don't have anything better to say than what Ayush said, but I'll be honest. So, Lion, until you sign with us, we don't really care. No, so I mean, depends on who you work with, right? If you work with me, obviously I'll take care of you 24/7. You can ping me anytime. We'll spend hours ideating together, talking about concept, because I really like talking about just general concepts. I want to know genuinely why you guys are interested in concept. But some publishing managers are different. Not that they're better or like worse than me, but everyone has different approaches. But where Lion is really good at, I would like to think, is providing ideas, because we have a team of, so we internally do not have developers. We're not, right? Like, we're a publisher, we're not game developer. So we do not have developers, but instead we have actually a number of game designers who provide you with their concepts and ideas. We give you guys freedom to pick whatever the concept, and you can always pitch your own ideas as well. And I really value this time, because I also learn a lot from my developers, just talking about concepts and their thoughts, their directions. And what Lion is really good at, I mean, after that, you're on your own. You develop your product, you do your art. I'm not gonna say much about, because I'm not an artist, I'm not a developer. You do your job better than I do, so you build your product. We test your game, and then let's say we move on to the next stage, monetization, scaling your game. And I think this is where Lion really shines, because we own AppLovin. Well, because AppLovin owns us, so it goes yeah, back and forth. I'm not saying that Supersonic, I mean, because that's why we consider Supersonic as our true competitor, because they also have Iron Source.
We are owned by Iron
Yes,
Source, yeah.
yes. Because Voodoo, I mean, they're our biggest client of AppLovin. If they make money, AppLovin makes money, Lion makes money. So it's more like a Samsung and Apple kind of relationship. Like, we don't hate them, you know, you're doing great, we're doing great, all good. Supersonic is a little bit different because they also have their network. Not as good as AppLovin, but it's getting there. But this is where we really shine because we have the ability to burn thousands of money on your game. We're not, I was talking to another studio just over lunch, how we don't recoup any of the production fee. If you work with us monthly basis, all the money that we give you every month, that's yours, whether you publish a game or not. Even if you publish a game with us, we don't recoup whatever the money that you get from us, because at the end of the day, we want to pay for your time and commitment, not necessarily like counting proto numbers every month. So what Lion can do better than any other publishers, I mean, they're really great, but once we scale your game, we really scale your game. Back in the days, we used to have really shitty contract. I really hated it because that really made my job difficult. We had 80-20 revenue share. But after talking to some developers who got 50-50, okay, let's not talk about Crazy Left because they're a sponsor of this event. But let's say, you know, you guys get like 40% from YSO or Mooney. But somehow our 20% is equivalent, if not more than their 40%. And this is because we own AppLovin, right? Any network that they're burning, you know, $10,000 every day, we're burning $40,000 every day on the game. So obviously the scalability is very, very different. So I think that's where Lion really excels at, and that's where we can really help scaling your game. And that's why we're moving away from smaller scale games, because AppLovin is, to be really honest, I don't think AppLovin is the engine or the network for smaller scale games. It's really for games that can scale and grow like all over the globe. So if you want your games to be like small scale launch, you can go work with Ayush. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
wouldn't mind.
I'm just kidding. No, but I think monetization, you know, growing your games, and then really, you know, have the team look at your monetization data and then come up with strategies that work better. I think that's where Lion can really provide better insights.
Fantastic. So I think Chansun, you already covered it, but I'll also give a chance for Ayush to sort of talk about it, which is, you know, based on the learnings that you've had in the market so far, and based on your individual product strategies, what would you insist or advise the developers to work towards in this upcoming year?
Definitely, I'd like to advise you to work towards higher LTV games. Maybe go to Lion. But if you really want your games to be in top charts, maybe go to some other publishers. But if you really want to earn some money, come to us because we know that shit. Yeah. We really don't burn. We really smartly burn the money, honestly speaking. And I wouldn't say that's because we are a part of Iron Source, but because you already know that, right? And yeah, so basically, if you look at the top charts, not about the games, but about the publishers, we are, I think, still at number 1. And we believe in not bragging about it, but again, like it's good for onboarding new studios. So if you want to test your games, I'm here. There I'll be. Just let me know.
Smooth. So I know over the years you guys have a bunch of experience training, building up studios, you know, taking them from a very nascent studio, from prototype stage to launch phase. I mean, it's a very satisfying field. So, so let's say if if a new indie studio, a small hyper casual studio come to you, they ask for just 3 tips. Just give me 3 tips to get started on hyper casual. What would those be?
Yeah, I would say just be patient. It's really important because all the games that I've launched so far, they at least took about average a year for any studios to launch their first game. Maybe they will launch it with us, maybe it didn't work out with us, and then they'll go to another studio. But whoever you work with, just be patient. And obviously, another thing is, I know that the previous session, Deepak and Mega, everyone was talking about, is it good to work with a lot of different publishers, or is it good to work with a single publisher? Actually, as a publisher, I want my developers to experience a lot of different publishers. So I often tell my developers who's been working with us for longer than 6 to 12 months, I tell them to go explore. Just go explore, launch a game, come back. So no, it's because I really believe that Voodoo is best at making arcade games. If your focus is in arcade, go learn from Voodoo. If you want to do simulation ASMR games, go for Crazy Labs, see what they're good at, like what you can learn. So I think because it's like a very subtle fit, right? Like you never know whether you have that great fit with Lion or Supersonic or Voodoo. So unless you try them out, like you would never know. Sometimes you're really good at making your product, but you don't know how to monetize it. And some publishers really good at it. Or some publishers don't really good at monetizing your game, but they're really good at giving you that one feedback that you need to make your game to the next level. So I think you guys need to try, if there is an opportunity, I would advise you guys to talk to as many PMs from as many publishers as possible. Learn from them what kind of feedback that they're giving you. Because at the end of the day, we're a community. Like, I don't care whether you guys publish with me, publish with Ayush. What I want to see is just games being published and developers getting paid like what they're worth, what they deserve. I mean, I know how hard all my developers work every night. I mean, they're just crazy, like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And you never know, I might go work for Voodoo for a bit, maybe Supersonic, I'll join Ayush for a bit. You never know, it's a small industry. You might meet me somewhere else. So just work with as many publishers as possible and then see who can lift you up a little. I think that's really important. Third tip, yeah, like let's just make games, let's just grind. Be patient, work with as many publishers as possible. And the third thing is, if it's your first published game, don't worry about, I know that it's a little bit odd thing to say, don't worry about making a lot of money at first, because the production cycle from ideation to monetization to actually soft launching your game, global launching your game, there are a lot of tests, there are a lot of iteration, there's a lot of process, there are a lot of people involved. You will learn a lot from that process. And that's something that you cannot learn by buying, or like that's something that you cannot learn with money. It's something that you have to go through, and it will give you that one insight, something, that will lift the entire team up. And now you're used to this publishing process and you know what to do. So everything else, I've seen a lot of studios taking over a year to launch their first product. But after that first launch, it usually just comes within the next 6 months because something in their head like clicks. I don't know what it is, like after their first launch. It's just like, it's just there. It's like, it just flows. So those are my 3 tips.
Very well said. Like all of the tips are mostly what I was going to talk about. But anyway, I'll try to add something new to here. Definitely, like the first thing that you have to keep in mind is that hyper casual is a very competitive industry wherein like every new day, as you can see, as many people are born, as many studios are also born these days, and that's what you have to conquer and compete with. So you have to be really patient with all of your tests, all of your concepts, and not basically get disheartened by anything that comes up to you. And that's the most important thing that I'd say. The second thing I would say is hmm, ask a lot of questions, man. Like a lot of questions to your publishing manager, to whoever is your game designer, if any. Uh, Luckily, if you have one, just ask a lot of questions based on anything that you have tested, or if you are going to test something, just trust the publisher because they have already seen many tests. I'm telling you, like each day they are seeing about 100 tests running through their platform, and they know better than you for sure. So just trust them, ask them a lot of questions. They would definitely answer your questions. And the third thing I would say, mm, that's a mixed pickle. But yeah, of course, make games that are unique to you. Because nowadays we are seeing a lot more games that are unique, getting into not just top charts but also highly profitable. So try to add your own salsa to it, your own pizza to it, whatever you are comfortable with. Just try to add your own stance to it and make it your own recipe, rather than looking for just top trends.
Awesome. I think I just loved that last point. It's about understanding our strengths in doing what we do right and then doing it with perseverance. Right? Awesome. So let's quickly conclude so we can open the floor for Q&A. So if we are to sort of conclude your learning from the Etsy market this year in one sentence, and also what you're expecting, the changes that you're expecting in the upcoming year, if you can just conclude it, then we can.
Sure. So basically, it was from the starting of hyper casual era, but this year it's more relevant than ever. This year was still the year of data more than ever. You have to look back and look all the data that you have tested, you have worked on, and see what made it fail. Also, if there are live games on your side, you have to look back and see if they are still making profits, if it was worth the effort, or if it's still making profit for you in the longer term. So every other publisher, it's more about reinventing that data into coming days, and also into present time, more about deeper learning from that data. That is going to be the next year. I'm pretty sure about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. So instead of focusing on hyper casual games, what Lion started doing is to do more live ops for our published games. Happy Glass, Mr. Bullet, our evergreen titles that are still generating money after 3 years of launching. We started to do more live ops event, more LTV. More RV, more optimized IAP content. So exactly what Ayush said. We're looking at our old data and then learn where we can improve more. So I see a lot of Supersonics or Voodoo's older runner games making a comeback, and I think there is a reason. It has nothing to do with a trend, but I think there is something in the data that we can learn. So I definitely agree with Ayush. So yeah, let's look at the data, but follow your gut. Because at the end of the day, it's not the publishers who's making your game, it's you. So it has to be fun, it has to be interesting for you. So we're just here to give you guys advice, but we're not like a decision maker, right? I want you guys to know what your final product would look like. If you don't have that idea, no one can give you that to you. So yeah, let's just focus on our end goal. And then I would say, let's just grind. I mean, this year was difficult for everyone. I know that, I'm sorry, we fired a few studios from Lion. I know a lot of publishers stopped working with their premium studios because they weren't generating a lot of revenue for themselves. So keeping up with all these studios was a struggle, even for our side. So I know this has been like a really difficult year for everyone. But it's almost over. I think COVID is almost over. So guys, let's just grind. Let's just hang on like until next year and then see whether we can find new hyper casual era. That's what I would say.
So there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Of course, of course.
Cool. On that note, let's open the floor to Q&A. If you guys have any questions, awesome.
Hello everyone. I would just like to apologize for my cold. Like
Same here,
right off
man.
the bat.
Same here. It's really
Yeah.
bad.
So as Chansun said that Lion specializes more in puzzle-based games. What is Supersonic's forte? I still fail to understand. Is it more like Clash Royale type of games, multiplayer type of
Yeah,
games?
that's a good question. What is your focus?
Our focus is hyper casual, man. Like we don't believe in subgenres. We have published a number of games based on TikTok trends. We have published ASMR games. We have published runners. We have published puzzles. So it's mainly just hyper casual. So yeah.
But if
relevant
you
for-
would have to, like thin it down to a subgenre, which subgenre would it be?
no subgenre.
You would
We,
like to
we
say.
work with of course with all the studios that I personally work with. I personally have a family of studios that I work with, and I personally suggest that if you are inclining towards a specific genre, try it for 1 month. Then later on change it to a different genre, because it's never about leaning towards one thing altogether. Never put all your eggs in the same basket, as you've heard. So yeah, diversification is the key, man.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. So,
Yeah.
in general, I just wanted to know, hyper casual, do they also do UA in tier 3 markets also, or mainly tier 1 geos? User acquisition in tier 3 markets like India or Brazil or India. I think you should talk about India.
So for hyper casual, the whole world is the market, man. Like it's a mass marketable concept. That's why we call it hyper casual.
Yeah, but is it profitable in tier 3 markets? in general?
That's a different question altogether. Maybe not so much. There's a scope of profitability everywhere. It's just that it's not so high as tier 1 markets. But yeah, of course. I'd like Chansun also.
Yeah, no, what Ayush said, it's totally, because this question also got brought up in the last session, right?
Yeah.
But so the reason we test any publisher, I think, test initially in the States. Do you guys test initially in the States or any other markets?
We test in tier 1 first of all, US, and then we do test in other countries, but specifically the initial test is in US,
Right.
Yeah.
And what's the reason?
just to see the CPI.
Yes. So if you guys look at the sensor tower chart, any kind of top chart that you guys look at, and you guys filter it out to US market and looking at the global market, it has exactly the same trend, same game. So that's like a good indicator that if your game does well in the US, your game will do well in the global market elsewhere. So that's usually the first reason why all the publishers test their games in the US market, because this is a good indicator of the global market trends. And usually, if the game gamification, like if the LTV is there, but the CPI is too high for us to run the campaign, if it becomes a burden, then sure, we will open it to India or maybe Brazil just to see the engagement data, but not necessarily the CPI, because we also don't want to spend like thousands of money just to look at the data, like burning money. So that's because also we're losing money doing the campaigns. So like that would be probably the only reason, like we'll be testing in India or Brazil, but 99.9% of the times, like any initial test will be in the States.
Thanks. Just another question. Do you see in new hyper casual games like two genres being merged, like for example, puzzle and runner, or I don't know, any other combinations? Do you see that happening right now?
Actually, yes. Actually, this really interests me because that's essentially what I want to do with all my developers. I think this is time where we have to merge either two different genres or two different mechanics, one theme, one mechanic, one another thing, something that was already successful in different games. I want you guys to find what was successful and then give it like a fresh new look or a fresh new mechanic. So what I'm trying to do at Lion Studios, I'm a big fan of puzzle games, just personally. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work on a lot of word games, but there are a lot of word games already in the market, right? So like I'm trying to see, okay, so I want to make word games, but what kind of different mechanic can I put to this word game? Like, is there any sort of different feel that I can give to word games? Then I'll be looking at some arcade games or simulation, trying to imagine whether any mechanic feels good with my word game theme, right? Another thing I'm trying to do is, I'm a big fan of Merge 2048 game. I keep playing it every day. I do all daily challenges every day. There are a lot of 2048. I'm not saying that you guys should get into this merge game because Lion is pursuing it because it's extremely difficult. There are thousands of match 3 merge games, IAP heavy. It's not easy to, just start those games. But what I'm trying to do is, what if we hyper casualize some successful casual games? What if we make a little bit lighter version of 2048? So it doesn't have such like a long tail as other casual 2048, but it still has that successful mechanic, very addictive, but it's still very light, like hyper casual. Voodoo used to try a lot of those back in the days, and I was crazy about those. But at the end of the day, they just couldn't, like, there is no 2048 game that Voodoo published. We published 2048 games, like back in the days, like I think Baller 2048, complete failure. So that's the thing. When you guys look at all other publishers' portfolio, like none of them has this 2040 successful 2048 games. Maybe that's where you guys want to focus next, and then bring me some new 2048 ideas. But so I think this is what I'm saying. This is what, sorry, I don't know your name, but this is what you were saying. I think it's really clever way to ideate your next spec or your next concept. Just come up with something that's already been proven in the market and then combine it with some unique mechanic from another genre. Or think about 2 successful mechanic in different genres, and then think about what's the best way to combine those 2. They will certainly give users the fresh feel. So yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Oh, you are not even interested in Ayush's opinion.
To say yes.
Yeah.
Not like that.
Not really. Nothing to add to the reply. Actually, it's brilliant and yeah, holistic.